Yo, was that a classic Sonic game? Yes! Back in 2022, we were bestowed with Sonic and the Fallen Star, a fully completed 2D fan game with a striking art style, captivating soundtrack, and tangible degree of effort behind it, gaining a lot of popularity almost immediately. So when a sequel was announced barely 1 year later that somehow looked even more beautiful and ambitious with promises of addressing all the critiques made to its predecessor, the hype was on par with an official release. I couldn't breathe. I kept watching that trailer over and over, admiring the sprites, listening to the music, pining for the day when I'd get to lay my hands on this new adventure in that succulent square bubble again. So after another year passed without any updates, I made a little video talking about the trailer to reignite the discussion, which then made Stardrop go, "Shoot, people are gonna get excited again. We gotta tell them." And thus, an official statement was given that the project had indeed been discontinued. Before my heart had a chance to sink, however, there was hope, as the plan was to release the unfinished build at some point. It wouldn't be the whole game, but it would be most of it, and that eventually came to pass. Sonic and the Moon Facility is a fully playable campaign with the only missing components being a majority of the special stages, cutscenes, a few bosses near the end, and a couple music tracks. For that reason, I won't be treating this like a typical review, going over all the details, pros and cons, freaks of nature getting in the way, but I still want to highlight where I thought improvements were made and give you a general overview of what this project entails. Once again, we have a beautiful game. Like with Fallen Star, if nothing else, your main takeaway from this adventure will be its presentation. Bright colors and charismatic sprites populate your screen from beginning to end with no two zones feeling the same. The theming has also been diversified even further, helping to stray from the more conventional tropes that these games often fall into. No casino levels here, haha! Wait. Alpine Avenue is a forest, but with a fusion of stone bricks and a legion of clock towers in the background. Rapids Ravine is an underwater cave with a focus on zip lines and vertical conveyor belts. Bamboo Breeze is a windy bamboo forest covered in a contrasting terrain of bumpy rocks and pillowy trees. Can't forget the above-water jellyfish, this game goes places. Shivering Sewer is where the Spark the Electric Jester influence is made more clear, literally using it as reference. Act 1 is deep under the city, but Act 2 takes you above ground, as evident by the distant buildings and newly falling snow. Urban Umbrella might just take the cake for originality though, an underwater, air-breathing civilization inside a giant bubble. You can even see the pipeline that takes you down here in the background of the sewers boss. Cloudy Complex is an autumn-scorched hiking trail way up high, the kind of place where you'd see big white text that says "man" at the top of the screen. Powdery Plains is a desert ocean at the bottom of the mountain, sharing a corrupted aesthetic with the Moon Facility, which in itself is a towering mechanical flagship whose logo can be seen all throughout the game as a motif. Make up your mind, Stardrop. I also never ran into the problem that Fallen Star sometimes had, where the background and foreground would clash, leaving me unsure of what I could jump on. It wasn't a common occurrence by any means, but still nice to see it get remedied. If you pause during gameplay, you can scroll over to read some flavor text on your character and current location. A small thing that, believe it or not, actually adds some context to the world building. Makes it feel kinda cozy and personal when I read that Urban Umbrella holds festivals at the bottom of the ocean. People attending cafes in a giant deep-sea bubble. It's charming! You can't tell me it's not. I'll smack you. It's clear that Stardrop wanted to go big and put as much care into this creation as possible. Really give the players something meaningful to remember and reflect on when they hit those credits. The cutscenes were probably going to be the most ambitious part of the game if I had to guess. Not only were they hand-drawn, but animated to a degree as well. It's no wonder they never got finished. Also, can we appreciate just how good Sonic's sprite is? This man is a walking Christmas ornament. Look at that peel-out animation. Ooh! You can even crank up the squash and stretch in the options. Oh dear, turn it back. When it comes to gameplay, this is very much a Fallen Star sequel, retaining all the same principles as before with marginal improvements across the board. This is not some radical evolution that blows the original out of the water, but rather a modest fine-tuning of what did and didn't work. Physics are, once again, on point, and ironically felt more polished here despite being an unfinished game. I barely ran into any weird collision mishaps or funny glitches. Pardon me, sir, just passing through. The closest I got was this launcher in Powdery Plains that didn't work, and an invincibility capsule that is actually a spring with the wrong sprite. I went insane for a minute thinking I could get this. In regards to movement, the drop dash can now be activated after hitting a spring as well. It used to only curl you into a ball, which was already a cool new feature, but this kicks it up even further, enabling a lot of time saves that couldn't exist otherwise. Especially because the elemental shield powers can also be activated in the same way. Even the super peel-out charges a bit faster now, just to keep the pace up that much more. What I was looking forward to most, however, were the adjustments in level design, because the greatest critique levied against Fallen Star was definitely its more passive approach to gameplay. While still fun, it felt like you were always on your way to that next big running segment. Jump a few times in between, maybe even pull off a cool trick or two, and then it's right back to the automation. Moon Facility, like I said, doesn't completely reform this structure, but it dials everything in to be a little better. For example, Fallen Star had a lot of split-second jumps to get onto higher pathways. I actually didn't give enough credit to this back in my review, and my appreciation for the game only went up as I discovered them. Well, they've taken this idea and turned up the frequency. Whether it be the classic jump at the crest of a hill before it goes down, edge of a platform with a pitfall in between, or a hidden spring somewhere, the game has more decisions to make than ever before. It's not my favorite method of shortcutting, because a lot of these jumps come up so fast that they're essentially impossible to react to without memorizing their locations, and it can kind of turn you into a paranoid lunatic jumping all over the place to anticipate that next blindsiding, only for you to make more mistakes than if you just held right, so you end up memorizing the whole thing anyway. It's not healthy. But for what it's worth, the game is a heck of a lot more interactive like this, and the spectacle itself is even more entertaining as a result. Lots of flashy gimmicks unique to every zone that don't feel like they dominate the playstyle as much. I know we complain about automation when it's a problem, but I'm not going to pretend like this doesn't look really cool either. Going fast in this game feels great. Wasn't a fan of how many dang springs there were pushing you back though. That was a bit rich for my blood. It's the same kind of problem. No one's gonna see these coming, so it becomes all about memorization instead of reaction and curiosity, causing all the encounters to feel the same as I leap around like a maniac with unresolved trauma. Speaking of which, one of the first things I noticed was the soft reduction in those zigzagging moments where you'd suddenly slam into a wall and have to turn around, jump up, then immediately turn around again, and it just kind of felt like the pace was being broken for no good reason. Well, that still happens occasionally, but they were smart to include springs that push you in the right directions. You don't get that awkward pause to reassess that you've hit a dead end. And most upper routes skip that type of interaction anyway, leaving it primarily as a penalty or an optional fork in the road where you can choose left or right. Very happy to see that get addressed. I will turn you to dust. Another wonderful inclusion was the increase in slope jumping opportunities. I was able to be a little more creative this time around, think outside the box and do some cool tricks. I'm not sure if this was intentional, but if you charge a drop dash, it'll cap your height regardless of inertia. So in this area where I would normally get flung up onto a rail and can't get back down, I can cut it short to bounce off this shield and still get to the same spot now with a power-up. This can be used a lot in speedrunning if your goal is to stay closer to the ground instead of being launched. Water is a more prominent asset now as well, existing in 4 different zones, 2 of which having mandatory plunges. One even puts you inside a bubble that makes you heavier, so you don't have to deal with moon jumps taking forever to land. I like this approach because instead of using water as a vessel for difficulty with contrasting, slower-paced objectives, these sections are mainly here for variety's sake, helping to retain that low entry level that Fallen Star established. There are no bottomless pits again, no insta-kill hazards of any sort besides drowning, but let's be real, you'd have to have onions for hands to let that happen, and no game overs. This is an easy game by design for the purpose of letting you mess around with the movement free of discouraging penalties. I had originally criticized the removal of 1-ups back in my video since it minimized a huge part of exploring the stages. And that's still true. Without them, I'm not only missing a collectible, but rings no longer have a greater purpose. This means anytime I go out of my way and stumble upon some boxes, there's a high likelihood that they contain something I don't need. Sorry guys. It's okay. Really? No. Now, Stardrop actually had a classic mode planned that would restore the extra lives, which is incredibly flattering since I'm like the only guy who wanted that, but it was understandably scrapped for time. However, their exclusion doesn't bother me as much as it used to because I've come to terms with what this type of Sonic game's appeal is. It's all about the time attack. Instead of exploring levels for the sake of survival or high score, I'm looking for ways to directly enhance my speed run. And while it's true that ring capsules carry little value now, there are still other items well worth the effort. Every act has a hidden pair of speed shoes, always accompanied by a convenient open road to use them on. And the returning elemental shields that augment your movement are once again game changers, specifically the electric shield. Finding one of these bad boys and dashing away with it is bliss. Honestly, a selling point, if you ask me, made even better now that we can activate it out of a spring. Seriously, pick any level and try beating it like this. If you don't get addicted, then congrats, you still have a chance to breathe fresh air. It is thrilling, to say the least. Plenty of motivation to not take damage, too. A new item was added to try and fill the void as well. the moon medals. There are 3 of these per act with a sound cue that plays when one is nearby. I heard that Amy was possibly going to be a 100% reward for getting these, but again, not a finished game, so unfortunately collecting them does nothing. Instead of scrapping her entirely though, she becomes a playable character after beating the game, along with Metal Sonic. He's got this jet dash that sends him diagonally up really fast, while Amy has an air dash that sends her forward, going much faster when used after jumping off a decline, and she can wall jump. Don't know how handy that gets, but hey, pretty powerful moveset. What have you done? Lastly, of course, we have the giant rings for special stage access with only the first 2 playable. If you jump into number 3, you'll be stuck in the endless forest until time runs out. 100 seconds. You're better off relaunching the game, so don't run into these on accident. You suck. They adopt a shoot-'em-up formula revolving around getting enough points. You have a power level, damage multiplier, shot type, and a time limit that all get reduced when you take a hit. So instantly, there's this huge challenge in avoiding obstacles, prioritizing item gain. I could see this getting very tricky later on. Even the second one beat me around like a fresh carrot. But yes, this does mean that you cannot collect all the Chaos Emeralds, so no true final boss with a snazzy new Lunar Sonic super form. There were plans, believe me, and if you want to see more information on all the cut content, Flames LBZ has 2 videos detailing that. Like a sword fight true final boss in space, a confrontation against the Fallen Star version of yourself in a remake of Frozen Fountain, or the Cloudy Complex Act 2 boss that you can surprisingly play in the debug menu where the robot from the background tries to step on you and then it turns into an aerial fight. There was going to be some crazy stuff in here, man. Speaking of bosses though, this was another area where I saw some notable improvement. You've got your mini bosses who you can wail on while they do their one attack, buddy, you need to lock it in. And major bosses who have thankfully gotten rid of those long, drawn-out attack cycles where you can't do any damage. Metal Sonic is night and day. Yeah, sometimes you can't hit him, but that's okay. Moderation is key, and all of his attacks are so fast that it doesn't get boring. Remember, Sonic is a resilient character. He can't die as long as you pick your rings back up. You can afford to throw in some hectic patterns, and I'm glad they did. Alpine Avenues was a great showcase of how drastically the elemental shields can tip the scales in your favor, too, giving you another big incentive to not take damage. The giant fish feels like a direct apology for the old submarine fight, treading a lot of the same beats with much less wait time. Although I'm not sure if there were enough bubbles. The final boss was really cool, a bit creepy even, especially right at the end where he looks like he's having a Joker moment. Fallen Stars had visual cues that you could miss if you were off screen, which made it kind of confusing to figure out, but here there's no such problem. It's just a hectic fight with a lot of attacks and HP. Scattered arrays of bullets, wily laser beams, tricky platforms for reaching the weak point while the next attack charges up, giving you a chance to cancel it, all set to a frantic backdrop of what I presume is the moon facility falling towards Earth, and a placeholder track from Mega Man 04 that fits really well. Honestly, not a bad note to end the game on. How is that soundtrack, by the way? Fallen Star left some pretty big shoes to fill. That thing was an auditory delight from start to finish, so expectations were high. And I think they killed it once again. The composer roles have reversed this time. Holly Taylor did most of the previous OST with Misty Rock and Roll popping in here and there, whereas Moon Facility was primarily helmed by Misty, with Holly offering a smaller contribution. Now, acquiring the music is in a bit of a weird spot right now because what you hear in-game are not the final mixes, and the ones that were officially released can sound quite different. So if you want to hear the music as it appears in-game, your best bet are the videos with exactly that. Regardless of how you listen to it though, it's another collection of guitar synth hits. We've got catchy beats, melodic solos, sprinkles of piano, and that unmistakable aura of adventure that screams Sonic the Hedgehog. Roll that jukebox. That gallery theme in particular hits pretty hard because you unlock it after beating the game, so it ends up being one of the last things you hear, scrolling through all the content that didn't make it in, reflecting on the very product that wasn't able to be finished. It's bittersweet. The whole game has a hint of sadness due to its fate. I know things happen, they have their reasons, and they've moved on from this. But I think I speak for everyone when I say that if the passion ever came back, I would be here day one. These Star Drop titles have a magic to them. The way they look, the way they sound, they inspire people. Sonic and the Moon Facility, despite its status, is a lot of fun. Had it been completed, there's little doubt in my mind that it would have been the Fallen Star improvement in nearly every way that they wanted it to be. Regardless though, I'm grateful to have gotten as much content as we did. It's not always easy for an artist to publicize unfinished work, so I'd like to personally thank Stardrop for releasing it to us at all. And I wish him luck in whatever comes next. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, don't forget to check out the next episode whenever I post it, which will probably be soon. Alright. See ya.